Aloha. Welcome to today's show. We are so excited. My name is Selena Conmackey, and I'm here with my co-host, Anna Larson. What are we talking about today, Anna?
Oh, today we have an amazing guest that is going to be joining us and talking about Hispanic Heritage Month, Hispanic culture, and being able to integrate that and weave that into all facets. He specifically works with school children, K through 12 schools as the superintendent of schools, but we're going to introduce him in just a minute. So I don't want to go too far into that. But we are celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month this month. And as part of that, that is really kind of the focus of our conversation, is appreciating who we are and where we came from and our cultures and being able to celebrate that.
No, I love that. And we were all talking a little bit before we came on, and I was sharing with Dr. Diaz, like, oh, I'm from Hawaii and I have a cousin that does bilingual education too. And I love that you can I love just how people can connect with their cultures, whether it's the same or not. And so I'm super excited to hear everything that Dr. Carrie and Dr. Diaz are going to say today. There's a lot of doctors that are happening that are going to come out of my word. Right.
A lot of doctors.
Yeah.
You can just call me Anna, though.
I know. Sometimes with my husband, I'm like, you can call me Dr. What? You know what I mean? But okay, let me bring up our first bio, and I'm going to read that. I'm so excited. I'm like trying to remember what I'm doing here, Anna. Okay. So obviously, this show could not happen without Dr. Carrie, and I'm such a super fan, and I talk about her in any kind of crowd that I have, because I just think she's so special. But she is a thought leader, researcher, educator, and trusted advisor in organizational development, diversity, equity, and inclusion, also known as DEI, and coaching. She has founded the Folk Institute in 2004 to further the impactful work she was doing. Carrie is also an experienced keynote speaker and training facilitator that has offered workshops throughout the Americas, Africa, Asia, Europe, and the Caribbean. She's passionate about health and wellness and international travel. I can go on and on and on, but then I might forget that we have Dr. Diaz, and he's pretty phenomenal too. So I'm going to just flip over to his bio so Anna can tell you a little bit about our next guest.
Yeah. Now, Carrie always invites the most amazing people onto her live stream show. So we are super excited to welcome Dr. Nicholas Diaz, the superintendent of schools for Union and Franklin Township schools in New Jersey. Dr. Diaz serves as the shared superintendent of schools for Union and Township, Franklin Township schools in New Jersey. His career, which began as an elementary school teacher, which I didn't get a chance to ask him what grade, but I'm excited to find that out, at Plainfield Public Schools, has seen him embrace roles from Catholic school principal at Our Lady of Fatima to superintendent's principal at Frelinghuysen Township School District. That is a mouthful one, but I got it. I think I got it. Beyond his district leadership, Dr. Diaz's influence extends to educational institutions and organizations, including serving as an adjunct professor at Centenary University and a board member for various educational associations. Recognized for his contributions, he has been awarded accolades such as the 2023 Communicator of the Year and has authored articles for esteemed publications. With proficiency in both English and Spanish, Dr. Diaz is dedicated to fostering inclusive educational environments and furthering the development of public education.
I think Dr. Diaz is going to give you an A for the two words we're discussing. I'm pretty sure.
I kind of stumbled, but now I can just say it rolls off the tongue.
Don't ask me to say it. He's gonna flunk me out of this live stream here if I try to say it on live. But let's bring them up, Anna. I'm so excited.
Yeah, here comes Dr. Carrie. Hi, Dr. Carrie, and Dr. Diaz. Hi, Dr. Diaz. So good to see you.
I know. Aloha. I'm loving it. Welcome to the show. Okay, Dr. Diaz. Did Anna do right by the two words?
Yes, I have a report card right here, A+.
My mother is going to be so proud.
Yes. Yeah, and our other mother, Dr. Carrie, would be like, good job, ladies. Like, we're always here to But Dr. Carrie, thank you also again for providing a space to have these kind of conversations. And I just want to, before we start the questions, there was a post on Instagram the other day that said, be around people that inspire you to do better. And I feel like this is what being in Dr. Carrie's space does. It allows us moments to have with people like Dr. Diaz. and all the other previous guests. And I'm just honored. I just want to make sure I say that to you, Dr. Carrie, because you're just absolutely wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I always look forward to this time and the opportunity to speak with people that are in my life that I also enjoy and appreciate. And Dr. Diaz, Nicholas is certainly one of them. Enjoyed the time that we spent interacting with each other. So welcome, and I'm glad you're here.
Yay.
Yeah. I always feel better every time we get together, get to speak. I've learned so much from you in this past year and a half that we've worked together. And yeah, you're definitely an inspirational figure in education in Hunterdon County as well. So.
Thank you.
I agree. I agree. I concur.
Yeah. And I was like, wait, I need to include myself in this because we all love Dr. Carrie.
Our conversation started. Every month, the Folk Institute puts out a thought for that month, something that's supposed to be thought-provoking, that makes you think just a little bit deeper, dig a little deeper maybe into your character, your personality, your heart, your soul, whatever it is that you want to call it. So today, this month's quote is from just the U.S. Supreme Court Judge Sonia Sotomayor. And she says it is important for all of us to appreciate where we come from and how that history has really shaped us in ways that we might not understand. Now, Justice Sotomayor is the first person of Hispanic descent and the third woman to sit on the United States Supreme Court. So when she talks about success, she's been known to attribute it to her cultural heritage by saying the Latina in me is an ember that blazes forever. So I think our first conversation has to kind of revolve around this quote and what it really means, because I think it is a good foundation for our conversation and our topic today. So can we start with you, Dr. Diaz? Like, when you hear this and you hear that kind of explanation, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, well, the first thought that comes to my mind about like the culture part. So when we started the interview, you mentioned parents. The first interview I ever had as a school principal, it was a local paper, and they asked me what my favorite food was. And of course, my dad and my mom got the newspaper article afterwards, and I was like so nervous. And I said spaghetti and meatballs. My wife's Italian, and so my parents, my Puerto Rican parents, saw this. They were like, "Tú no dijiste arroz con habichuela. You didn't say rice and beans." And I was like, "I'm sorry, I got nervous. I said the first thing that came to mind." And that was hysterical. That was not a good start to that, but I think it does play into your cultural background. And I love her metaphor of the ember. It is definitely compelling. I think it symbolizes like your inner fire, like your ambition, resilience, your sense of purpose in her. And I think that a lot of that comes from our families. You know, in the Latino culture that I'm part of, our families mean so much. Like I remember our Sunday dinners in Puerto Rico. It was everybody was there. My sisters, my brother, my grandma, my uncles, everyone was together. And it was always a celebration. It felt like every week it was like we were celebrating some accomplishment, but we were just celebrating being with each other. And into this day, you know, we have tech, even though we're in such different places, like my family in Florida, family in Puerto Rico, family in New Jersey, in Pennsylvania. We have a text thread going all the time and speaking of each other's accomplishments. We try to celebrate each other, even though we can't be with each other personally. We're still with each other in spirit, and it is such an important part of us, you know, as a family and as individuals. And I think when you think about your heritage, not just recognizing like some of those traditions, like the family dinners on Sunday, I think it's now acknowledging that the dynamics, you know, how it plays on who we are as a person, how it forms us and shapes us into who we currently are. And just recognizing, you know, the value of our cultural history enables us to, those life lessons that we have from our families into context, enriching ourselves and the communities that we serve. So the family dynamics that I was always part of, I think helps me as a current superintendent in looking at my students as extended family members that I can serve and help.
Oh, I love that. I love that extended family member thought. Like, what a fantastic way to end your thought process on that. And I'm sure that your students feel that, like when somebody looks at them that way, then they feel that community and that family orientation. So that's beautiful. Yeah. Dr. Carrie, what would you add to that?
Well, first of all, I think Nicholas did such a good job expressing and sharing that. I agree. I would say one of the most important things is for self-identity and self-awareness. There's a saying, if you don't know where you come from, you don't know where you're going. And it was in Alice in Wonderland, I think, that also said, if you don't know where you're going, that's where you're going to end up. You just don't know. You're wandering. So there's something about understanding your culture that gets you grounded and gets you rooted, and also gives you a sense of who you are and your voice, and the opportunity to express that. And I will share with you, as being a woman of African descent. For a long time, I thought that I didn't really have that. We didn't have the history of the culture or the richness of knowing where we came from, what part of Africa. And then I began to realize is that the history that's rich and that actually gives voice to us as African Americans is recognizing how we ended up in the United States. And what I mean by that is like the endurance and the strength that it took for our grandparents and great grandparents to survive. Okay, regardless of what it was, but that they survived, and that's the legacy or the shoulders that we stand on. So that is our history. That is my history. That is my history is American history. Okay, regardless of whether we like it or dislike it, that's irrelevant. The fact of the matter is that it is the history, and it allows us to stand on that and to look at the things that the good, the benefits that came from, and all that emerged from the resiliency of that. That gives me a sense of pride in terms of who I am. And I think that's for all of us, regardless of what that history is to be able to see that history and acknowledge that that is part of who you are. And that also lets me know every single day that whatever I set my mind to, I can do it. Okay, I can survive it.
It's almost like it's an empowerment. It's part of that empowerment of your personality, right? When you finally understand, or at least maybe even not fully understand, but at least have a feeling of completeness by knowing that where you came from. And I really like how you said that, Carrie, like that it wasn't so much that because you felt something was lacking from your African culture, but then understanding it was how you came to America. Like the way you worded that was so interesting and so well put, in the sense that I think there's a lot of people out there that feel like they're missing that piece of their culture, of who they are, and that there is still an opportunity to embrace it and become, I'm struggling with the words today. Like,
Oh yeah, Anna, I think it's never too late, right, Dr. Carrie or Dr. Diaz? I think like no matter when, if you are able to connect with your culture and you want to tap back into it because you've never given it the space it deserves, I think you could be 50 or 60. I mean, I was 40 years old when I left my home, and I was finally able to embrace my culture in its entirety and really dig into my history, my this. So I think I think it doesn't matter how old you are, when you can do all these things that Dr. Carrie and Dr. Diaz have just kind of like shared. So
that's fantastic.
My daughter, I'm sorry. So
No.
recently, it spurred a thought. My daughter recently, so she's in high school, and for the first time ever, she came home and was like talking to my wife and I. It's like, I really want a quinceañera. She's 14. She's going to be 15 soon, and I was like surprised. I'm like, she's, in high school right now and never ever has spoken about having a quinceañera. And I didn't even know she had that connection to our culture. She spent a summer with my dad, her grandpa, and my mom, her grandmother. And she had a great time. And I think that also influenced her when she came back, that recently she's thinking about, where she came from, who her family is, how important her heritage is to her. So it was heartwarming for her to ask for. Now it's like planning a wedding now for her.
Right.
Yes.
I'm happy that she wanted to even do it, came from her.
Right. You probably need to be a superintendent also for another like state, right? Oh, 3 to pay for, right.
Absolutely.
I just want to know what celebrity is coming to sing at her quinceañera.
Right?
Like, I just want to know who you got, because I want to follow you guys on social media.
Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce, maybe I can get them to come.
You never know.
Well, I will tell you, I actually had an opportunity to actually witness one in Central Park, which was absolutely amazing. I mean, I really appreciate that. The other thing I want to say about when we know where we come from, how it makes such richness when I'm with other people other groups that come from different places and how we can then talk about and explain. Like that to me is we do workshops obviously and all of that. That social interaction I think is where you learn more about people, and when both individuals or all of the people are comfortable in who they are and what they bring to the table, it just makes for such rich conversations and communications, and everybody leaves understanding a little bit more about the person that's not of their culture.
Yeah.
So I think just creating those kinds of environments are so important to help people understand and create community, if you will.
It goes along with your tagline, Dr. Carrie, that process of unlearning to learn, right? And we have these thoughts or these misconceptions about what another culture is supposed to be like, or what they do, or how they say things, or what food they eat, or, whatever it might be. And, when you do take the time to have those conversations with other people, this is what you're talking about. Now you have a better understanding. You can get rid of those misconceptions, those biases, those things that are, have filtered your lens for so long, and truly understand at least this one person in a better way.
Exactly.
So I love it.
Yeah. No. Okay. Look, we could talk all day because I might start talking about food. And then, that's a whole nother thing when we talk about food. I mean, and I love how we had a comment from one of our TFI team cat saying, like, that's part of the Cuban Filipino, like, plate, you know what I mean? So, but I love it because food is also a connector of different cultures, right? And it allows you like this moment to sit and learn. Like how Dr. Carrie said, you get invited into spaces sometimes over food. And I just love that. Okay. See, I did talk about food. We're going to have to move on. Let's start on our first question here, Anna.
Yeah. So our first question really does flow from what we were just discussing, because it's all about the importance of learning other languages and being bilingual. And Dr. Diaz, you are a huge advocate for bilingual education. Can you tell us a little bit more about the importance of learning other languages?
Yeah, absolutely. So you asked earlier, like, what did I teach? So I was an elementary teacher, first grade. My first job actually was kindergarten. And the only reason I got into kindergarten is because my sister was the teacher of the year. She went on a maternity leave, and I was student teaching in her building. They're like, oh, well, you're related to your sister, or your brother, so you must be good teachers. They threw me in there. And to this day, I don't know how those kids are doing. Hopefully they're doing well. But,
big shoes to fill in little minds.
It was great. But after that, my first role was as a dual language teacher. And it was an amazing experience seeing students from other cultures. And our focus was in Plainfield, it was on Spanish as being the other language you were going to learn. But students who were not from Spanish backgrounds, Hispanic backgrounds, being fluent in two languages by the time they graduate high school was an amazing opportunity that Plainfield offered for students. And being part of that brought me a lot of pride. And there's research that definitely shows that bilingual students outperform their monolingual counterparts in tasks that require attention and working memory. It's akin to giving your brain a workout. And I saw that in my students. By the time they started with me, being the first grade teacher, and they got in being in high school, and they knew two languages, and they could not only just speak the language, but think in the language and have content area subjects that they're working on, math, science in another language. And that's completely impressive and sets them up for success. In a globalized world, what are they going to be looking at? In a competitive job market, if you can speak two languages, you're going to be up at the top of their resume, individuals that they want to bring in for interviews. So I think that opportunity for students in itself was amazing. Also, just building the empathy piece. Again, when you're a non-Hispanic person and the other language, now you just have a whole new appreciation for your classmates that you didn't have before. So I think there were so many benefits from the program, and
I love that. I want to jump in and just say to you, my daughter is a senior in high school. She took Spanish and she had an opportunity to go to Spain this past summer. She sent me a message. She goes, oh, I was so nervous, but I spoke Spanish in the Starbucks because we didn't know where the bathroom was. And but she was so proud that she goes, there was just this connection for her, she was really shy. I think the imposter syndrome hit her a little bit when she went there. She didn't want to be like, I can speak some, right? Like I have 3 years of high school, but just the pure confidence, that boost that she got of just saying, I can now, I can hang in Spain, Mom. like, you know.
Yeah.
But that, yeah, you just made me think of that when you talk about when students do that and what it helps them do.
I feel like it also weaves the ability for someone to feel connected to the global world as opposed to just their little community or their neighborhood that they're in, right? When you can speak another language, there's now a connection to a whole nother maybe continent or, you know, location that you may or may not ever go to, but at least there's now this ability to see outside of your small sphere. So yeah, yeah, I speak Italian and a little bit of Spanish. I used to be very fluent in Spanish, like all the way through college, and then I moved to Italy, and then I lost everything in the pursuit of Italian because they're so similar. My brain can't retain both. So now I speak this mixture of Italian, Spanish, you know, conglomeration that nobody understands except for me, probably.
I'm sure it's like riding a bike. You just get back on, it'll be like nothing.
Mhm.
Exactly. So, okay. So Dr. Carrie, we're going to throw you into the spotlight and we're going to ask you the same question, but let's put the business spin on it, right? How does being bilingual empower a workforce and really make a business more successful?
You know, it's very interesting. I'll start with from an education standpoint too. Also, being an educator, it's so what it does for the individual personally in terms of self-confidence and also awareness of other people. You know, because you have to when you begin to acknowledge and recognize in another language, another culture, and how they interact and how they communicate and what's important to them, you're more open to hearing and meeting people that's from even different backgrounds than that. The exposure is incredible. And because we're now, I mean, we live in a global world right now, and we are going to continuously move from different states, different countries, different parts of the world. Organizations, corporations are expanding. They're global. They're looking for people that they can send to other parts of the world to represent the company, to represent the corporation. So having that second language, like Nicholas mentioned, puts you really at the top in terms of the resume, in terms of, well, here's someone, because when I'm looking at, having been in business as well, when I'm looking at a resume and I'm looking at the diversity of where people have interacted and they've studied abroad, they've done all of these different things, then I know that they come with a very broad mindset in terms of interacting with people and accepting everyone and being more open in terms of their interaction. So when I was working in education, when I was the dean of intercultural development, one of the things that I was adamant about was all of the students would do a study abroad. Okay, for the aware, even if they were unable to speak the language, for the awareness of what it means to be in a different culture, and where you're not the dominant one in the culture, it also opens you up to, when you return home, having more empathy, and especially if you live in a culture like Selena, your daughter going to Spain, living in a culture where that is not your native language is very, very challenging. It really causes you to then begin to acknowledge and recognize the distinction between your culture and other cultures. And I had that opportunity because I lived and worked in Puerto Rico, as I think you know, Anna and Selena. I lived and worked in Puerto Rico for 14 months. When I first moved there, and I was working and I was the executive director, and I had meetings daily with the entire team, the managers that is, and it was always in Spanish, because on the West Coast, as you know, Nicholas, they don't speak English on the West Coast of Puerto Rico. I mean, it was all Spanish. So it was very interesting. And in fact, one of the things I would joke, when I went home at night, I would have a headache. Okay, because the brain, just shifting the brain to that. So when you have that understanding, and having also, spent time in Sweden with my late husband, who was Swedish. Okay, I know very little Swedish, but at the same time, I'm immersed in the culture because I spend time there. So again, and can you be comfortable in yourself in a culture or with other people where they're not speaking your language? Do you feel like they're talking about you or uncomfortable? And those are the kinds of things that we have to work on, because we live in such a multicultural world right now. And so, and certainly in business as well, being able to understand and accept that.
I feel like it starts with where Dr. Diaz is at with these school children, right? And then it builds, Carrie, up to the kinds of things that TFI does with trying to make workplaces more integrated and team members work better together to understand each other better. But it really does start where Dr. Diaz is at it in the, when these young minds are forming and helping them understand that we do live in a multicultural global world. I think that's really hard sometimes for people. Our generation, I'm going to say my generation, right? My generation didn't grow up that way. We did not grow up thinking globally. We were very small community minded, I think. And I love the difference that I'm seeing now because I see, it's just this progression and, makes your heart proud. Like to hear my son, he speaks Japanese. He's trying to learn 2 languages right now, right? Japanese and Spanish. He wants to do both, right? And I love that. I love that about him. But I wonder, if anyway, I'm going to just leave it with that because I do want to go on to our next question about, which is going from like the language and then looking at role models and how role models from different cultures, how they play into and impact students and the workplace. We're going to start again with Dr. Diaz, and let's start with the generation of students entering the workforce and the impact of these role models that you bring and show them from different cultures.
Yeah, so role models play such an important role, right? So they serve as like the living, breathing proof that success is attainable for students. And I don't think the representation is just essential for, like, we're talking about Hispanic Heritage Month. So representation is not just important for our Hispanic students, but I think for all of our students to not only they'll see themselves reflected in like the media and history books as they should be, but I think it's important, again, not just for the students who are represented by that individual that serve as a role model, but for all the students. It's completely key. And I think for role models from the same cultural or ethnic background, they can definitely resonate with students in a unique, in a meaningful way. It helps to combat stereotypes, elevate our community pride, and inspire the next generation, to dream, without, limitations. Sorry about the bell.
It's time. Get to class, everybody, or else.
Do you see students searching out or seeking out role models? Are they looking for that actively, or is it something that just kind of someone finally inspires them and then they get it, or they have an aha moment?
I think subconsciously, I would say yes. We all are. I think we all are looking for what could be. What's the potential that's out there. I think when we see somebody who we can identify with and say, yeah, it almost closes the gap between what's possible and where I currently am. So I think having that role model to say, yeah, I can do this. This could be me someday. I think that's so important for our students to have that inspiration and that hope that it could be them one day.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going off script a little bit, but Dr. Diaz, I got to know, like, did you have a role model growing up? Was there someone that you looked at and just thought, amazing person?
I mean, I have an amazing family. I really do. And those are my first, because they're the people that I saw the most. And I had older cousins who I always looked up to. When I first got to Puerto Rico, they made fun of me because I didn't speak a word of Spanish. And they would talk about me behind my back. So by survival mode, I learned Spanish pretty quickly. But just seeing them, just the way that they handled themselves. They were athletes. All of them were athletes. Baseball was a big sport in Puerto Rico. But they always told me that you have to have good grades or else you can't play sports. So that was always, so education was important, and that was instilled in me by my family. And then the athletic part, which still carries on to this day, being back in the States when we moved here, now football became our big thing. My dad would prefer me to play baseball. He wanted me to play baseball, but when I moved over here, football was, and I'm a big tall guy, so you'd be a football player. But that's still in my own children. It's school comes first, and then sports.
Yeah. So I love that you said your family, and that's who you picked as your role model, because I think it's important to just know that it doesn't have to be someone famous or wealthy or a massive figurehead of some kind. It really truly can be the person next door or your older brother or your father, just like you were mentioning.
And for me, my sister as well. I mean, she was an educator, and I was kind of lost figuring out what I want to do with my life. The NFL wasn't probably come knocking on my door. It's less
Right.
of an athlete up there.
Yeah.
It was like, well, what can I do? What am I going to do with myself? And seeing my sister, who would spend countless hours, on lesson plans, on planning
Mhm.
for the next day, and then that's going out and buying whatever her students needed with their own money. And as you know, teachers aren't the best paid employees.
No.
I'm working on that in my own district.
Okay, right.
Local people.
Yeah. I want to say, like, just when you talk about this, Anna, right, and you asked Dr. Diaz, like, it did come to mind. I mean, I love my family, but actually the most impactful person I had always looked up to was actually my 8th grade math teacher.
Mm.
And I don't like math. Did not move on with me in my future, but there was something about him that I was going through a hard time. My parents were divorcing at a young age, and him and his wife showed up at a soccer game just to show up and say, hey, and it just kind of continued that inspiration of like showing up for your people. And so I don't know, that's what you sparked up. But as an educator, I wanted you to know the most impactful person is, yes, probably the most underpaid individual on the planet. I mean, you guys, what educators do is so amazing.
Yeah.
And the impact and the ripple effect that you probably never get to see sometimes is so massive. I mean,
It's so true, Selena. I mean, I write a lot for what I do for work, Dr. Diaz, and I write a lot about my 4th grade teacher. He kept snakes in the classroom. He took me out hunting for snakes, and I mean, this is a long time ago. These are things that would never be allowed, I don't think, in public school nowadays. But in my head, he has instilled so much of who I am, my value sets, and just loving people outside of your family. Anyway, yes, educators deserve to be celebrated as role models. Absolutely. I would definitely say that is huge and important. Okay, Carrie, we're going to throw you into the spotlight. Who is your role model? And then let's talk about the impact of role models on this generation entering the workforce.
I think that when we talk about how we grow up from infancy to childhood, everything we obviously are exposed to our family, our immediate family, then our extended family, the community that we grow up in, then ultimately the city, the state, the town, and then the country. So the media and marketing plays a huge role, okay, in terms of how we shape and begin to view ourselves too. So you think about what happens to children when they don't see people on TV or in magazines that look like them. I think what we have done now, and what I see happening now, and the change that has happened is just tremendous, that we are celebrating. You can turn on the TV now, and it's celebrating, acknowledging Hispanic Heritage Month. I was in Target the other day, and they were playing, like, first of all, I love Latin music. I mean, I can salsa, I can do it all. Okay, know this. Okay, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So to be in Target with them playing the music, okay, and it was just really, it was such a cathartic moment for me. Not only did they have, and this is I was in Phillipsburg, Phillipsburg, right? Nicholas.
Okay.
I was in Phillipsburg, and they were also Latino workers there and whatnot. And I've lived in this area for a very long time, and so to me, when I think of little kids coming in and they see this and they hear the music, it's like a sense of belonging. Okay, and we're talking about that whole sense of belonging. So I think it's extended out because it will have a major impact on young people growing up. And for myself, it's amazing when people would ask me who was the major role model in my life. For a long time, I was just kind of like, well, this is just who I am. And it took a few years ago when I was writing my dissertation to come to terms with because I grew up in an environment at a time where there were very few people that looked like me in media or anything else, and my family stressed education and whatnot. And I was like from 5 years old, as you guys know, that I made the decision at 5 years old that when I grew up I was changing the world. Right? I'm doing it now, Nicholas, by the way. So and,
I know you are.
and I remember when I was writing the dissertation that Shirley Chisholm, those of you but Shirley Chisholm was the first Black woman, African American woman to be in Congress, and she was the first woman to run for president. Shirley Chisholm was my 5th grade commencement speaker. Okay, and for the first time in my life, I saw a person other than my family that looked like me, that aside from people in music, because we had like Aretha Franklin and people like that in the music industry, but this was a woman who was an orator and was amazing. And I can still remember to this day the dress I was wearing. I remember the songs that we sang, and I even remember some of the things that she said, because and that how powerful that was for me. And she was getting death threats and everything because running for president at that time, or just even being in Congress, and from both sides, she was just really pressured. But that was huge, and it was just so embedded in my subconscious that it came to the surface, and I was reminded. So yes, that was a role model for me to share this story.
You've mentioned her before, Carrie, in some of our conversations, and I love that she had such an impact on you, and I love that you had that opportunity and that experience. I mean, what do you think what is the result if somebody doesn't ever find that, right? If they don't ever see that, like, what is the result of that for these generations that we have now?
What's interesting is I would have to say that it would be it's almost improbable that they will not be exposed now because of social media, because of globalization, because even on television now they are sharing a lot of differences, if you will, in terms of people and what they're doing. And we're seeing it in whether it's sports, whether it's looking in the music industry, wherever we look, we see the diversity that exists. Education. I mean, look, we're talking to Dr. Nicholas Diaz, okay? You know what I mean? So you're thinking about it from that perspective. We are seeing this and we're hearing this. Excuse me. So I think that it's highly unlikely now that the exposure would not exist. What could actually create a possibility where it does not exist is where there's fear, where people are fearful of being exposed or their children being exposed to difference, that somehow it's going to take away from who they are. So that's where we come in as educators, because I educate, as you know, from nursery school through businesses and corporations, because it's important that people understand that this is not about taking away one to add another. Similarly, when we teach about gender, it's not about raising, and I do a lot of work with women and women's empowerment. It's not raising women up at the expense of men being less. It's about bringing balance. It's the same thing with when we're talking about cultures and bringing people together. It's about creating a space where everyone has opportunity and everyone can learn and grow together. And what we have to do is continue to work on the barriers of fear, both the internal or the intrinsic as well as the external. How do we help people get to a place where that's all this is about? Like, how do we just like hang out together and everybody do their thing? I mean, that's really where we're coming from. And I'm going to shut up now.
Actually, I'm going to make you keep talking, because I want to kind of flow this into, let's turn our focus just a little bit to what this month it represents, which is Hispanic Heritage Month, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the Hispanic heritage, Hispanic culture. I've seen a lot of different posts, a lot of different thoughts on this, a lot of different things about, celebrating in the ways you can celebrate it, whether it's with your family, within your workplace, as an individual. So do you, Carrie, I'm going to throw this question up there. Do you see an overlap in how organizations can integrate Hispanic culture and history into their processes? Like, how do you take something like a culture and integrate it into your organization and your processes and your people in such a way that that it does what you're talking about, eradicates that fear and creates that community and that global perspective?
That's a really good question. One of the organizations that I've worked for, a lot of organizations have dining rooms, where cafeterias. And what's interesting is during Hispanic Heritage Month, they have the food, like the various foods, and they even have like art is another way that I've used. When I was the dean of cultural development at Lafayette College, I did a lot of artists, bringing artists in, because it's a good way for people to learn about cultures through art. So in organizations doing and even in schools, having festivals in schools. So it's a way of introducing other cultures and learning about other people without, feeling like let's sit down and teach you this. Being exposure is really what I'm saying. How do we expose? So in organizations, they do that. The cafeteria will serve throughout the month, the different foods, and also art, display art. When we worked I've done things like festivals, both in universities as well as in organizations, where you would have a market, a couple times a year, and you use that as an opportunity to allow vendors to come in from various cultures. Only have people taste the food, but teach them about the different foods and where it comes from. So it's a way of doing that. And this is what's happening, as I said, in organizations as well as in school systems, because that's what we do, is helping people to understand and experience, and also with art, and allowing children to learn a little bit about a particular culture, let's say the Hispanic culture, and then maybe draw, like maybe you have your kindergartens or your first graders actually doing some artwork and art to display that, and then displaying it and having them or maybe by the time they get in the third or fourth grade, writing a story about someone that they read about. So just ways of introducing it where it's palatable, it's not fear based, and it's not trying to push it on anyone, because it should never be that way. We don't learn like that. When we resist it, once someone resists, they shut down, and there's no exchange taking place. So we want to do it from a place where people feel open and they feel safe.
Yeah,
I love that you brought up it's food and art is such a very easy way to connect people. We all need to eat. We all love to just see art in different ways, but I don't know. Okay, we're gonna have to create a food and art festival just here for TFI. Dr. Diaz is going to come with
music in there too.
Yes.
Food, art, and music. Those three things right there, they're kind of a universal language that everyone can appreciate in some form.
Yeah.
No.
And let's not forget dance.
I mean, yes.
Let's not forget dance, please.
No,
I'll be a DJ. I'm not a good dancer. I just do a little like shoulder shimmy. That's all I can do.
I'm not a good dancer either, but I'm also not afraid to be up there. I will backup dance you any day. Any day.
With confidence. As long as you're confident when you do it, that's all you need.
Right. Okay.
Because I've spent time in so many different cultures. Again, as you know, I spent a lot of time in Sweden. In fact, Dr. Diaz, I also have my residency in Sweden, so I'm there often, right? And I in New York, I wanted to go away once. I needed to get away for the weekend. I like to do retreats. I went upstate New York, and I ended up at this place they were having a Jewish festival. I didn't realize it was a Jewish festival. I was the only non-Jewish person, and clearly you can tell that I don't particularly look like a Jewish person, but I was the only non-Jewish person there. And the food, and they taught me how to do the folk dancing and everything. I hung out with these folks and danced. I learned a lot about Jewish history, and I was out there on the floor with them learning folk dancing and everything else. So it just doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, like me, I'm a citizen of the universe as far as I'm concerned. You know what I mean? Wherever I go, I'm going to be comfortable. I'm going to learn your culture. I'm going to respect it, and I'm going to take something away from it. So dancing, and of course, we have Latin, we have whatever culture. I'm like ready to do it. So.
Dr. Diaz, do you see the same things happening in the school system? Do you see the same, like what Carrie was talking about in terms of that, like bringing music and art and culture? Like, why is that so important for the school system as well, as an educator?
Yeah, I think it's because number one, representation matters, as Dr. Carrie said, and having that being able to be for our students. But I think the other part in terms of like the food, those are the things that do bring people together. And when we have, and those are things like easy icebreakers as well. So it's not, sometimes discussions and like awkward conversations, in a classroom aren't the best way to do it. But when you're sitting down, appreciating, anyone can appreciate music, you can appreciate food together, you can appreciate dance. Those are things that are easy conversation starters and helps to break down those barriers that sometimes are just naturally occur in us when we're dealing with the unknown. But and you get a good laugh. I mean, sense of humor is so important. It's part of it.
Yeah, that's for sure. What is I'm going to just ask this to both you and Carrie. Like, what is this overlap, right? Like, I'd love to just have a really brief discussion on what you're doing, Dr. Diaz, in shaping these young minds and helping them like start down that path of understanding multiculturalism and feeling that acceptance. And then Carrie, you work so much with organizations that are trying to implement equity and inclusion and all of those things into their organizations so their workforce feels supported. Like, just between the two of you, like, where do you see these overlaps happening and the importance of one to the other and back and forth? Because I feel like there's this flow that happens between the two.
Yeah.
I would say you're absolutely right. The way that one of the ways that TFI is a connector, because not only do we work with the organization, we also work with school systems. Okay, and so and because we also understand both, and we'll let Dr. Diaz speak to that as well, supporting school systems and understanding, and also bringing that into the school systems. So we've done that with several school districts, and then also in universities. We still work with universities as well. So doing basically the same thing. By the time we get to the business or the corporation, we're doing it at a different level. I'm ecstatic to be doing it at the school level, because we're introducing it at a point where, because that's the next generation of people in the business world. So I mean, I'm an idealist. So hopefully by the time those children are in kindergarten now, when they're in the school system, there will be no need for us doing this kind of work in the organizations, because they will have already integrated. So that's why for me at TFI, it takes us doing both, because we want to begin to integrate that. So it's just a smooth transition. I mean, again, like I said, I'm an idealist and an optimist. So anyway, Dr. Diaz.
Yeah.
I mean, so you're talking about Hispanic Heritage Month. The Hispanic community is an integral part of like just American society and the fabric. And how many contributions have we made in science, art, politics, sports, as I mentioned before? I think when we ignore these contributions, like, we just do a disservice for the idea of education, period. It's just, we have to present a comprehensive, and we try to do an unbiased view of the world. When you leave culture's contributions out, you don't offer that. So we have to. So when we include Hispanic culture and history, we offer that fuller, richer narrative that reflects the diversity of just the human experience, for all of our students. And I mentioned before, representation, matters. When our Hispanic students or students of other cultures see themselves reflected in the curriculum, what does it do for them? Fosters a sense of belonging, a sense of validation for them. It sends a message that their heritage is worthy of study and respect. Which entails, just a sense of pride for their own community and their families, boost their own self-esteem. So it's so important. And for the students who are not of that culture, what does it build? It fosters empathy, respect, and a more nuanced understanding, of how the world works and what other cultures experience and what they think. And it's just, I think, as Dr. Carrie said before, the more we are exposed to other cultures and ways of thinking, I think the better humans we can become. Even if we don't agree in the end, that's okay. At a minimum, it'll foster understanding and empathy, I hope, hopefully.
Yeah. And that's the goal, right? I mean, at least the initial goal is to foster understanding and empathy. Okay, this has been a fantastic conversation. Thank
Yes.
you so much for, we kind of jumped around a little bit, but I think it all flows together. Like, I feel so inspired saying, yay, we have people like Dr. Diaz in our school system.
Yeah.
Yay, we have Dr. Carrie and TFI on the other end, helping organizations and universities and kind of some of these more bigger global entities to see deeper than maybe where they initially started.
Mhm.
And to weave those cultures and that the beauty of being a global multicultural community
Yeah.
into every part of who we are.
No, I'm just going to speak just as a Hawaiian person. It's so amazing. I grew up with not a lot of representation of different cultures, even though I know I grew up in Hawaii, that was different, but just what you saw on TV and what you read in books. And now it's just amazing to me that that has changed. And I see it with my daughter, and I just, her narrative is different. Like she's like, why are you seeing all these people here in your old movie? Why is it like that? I'm like, right. And so I love, I just want to say this makes me happy in my heart, just knowing that this is more of a conversation today than it was. I won't say how old I am, but just, how it was back in my day. And I'm so grateful for this conversation. I don't know. I hope we get an invitation to Dr. Diaz's daughter's
Quinceañera?
that's coming. Yeah. I mean, I'll do a little shimmy for her and I'll be like, look, I met your dad because of Dr. Carrie.
I just love that he can't say the word without doing a little, like,
I don't think you can. I think you have to shimmy somehow, right? So
it just starts a party that starts with a word, just saying it. Okay, so we are going to go ahead and share with you how you can connect with Dr. Diaz a little bit better. Actually, we're going to make Dr. Diaz share that with you. So Celine's going to pull up this slide. Dr. Diaz, can you tell people if they're interested in reaching out to you, maybe discussing more, how they can find you?
Sure. Yeah. So our school websites are up there. So we have www.unionpwpschool.org, and that's for Union Township, and Franklin is www.ftschool.org. I'm also on Twitter at Nicholas A. Diaz, and I'm also on LinkedIn as well. I don't remember my handle, but it's Nicholas Diaz, and you'll see my logos on LinkedIn as well for Union and Franklin. And I'm happy to connect with anyone anytime. Love education. Education brings so many people together. It really does. And social media, I met people that I never would have met before without social media. So while there's a lot of negative with social media, there's also a lot of positivity and global connections that we can get out of it.
That is so true. I know where I'm going next, Anna. I'm going to go connect with Dr. Nicholas on LinkedIn. I'm going to ensure our invitation. I'm going to do all the things, right.
Absolutely. So as we start to wrap up, we just want to remind everyone, we do these live streams monthly. Our next one is scheduled for October 12th, and we will have our speaker confirmed soon. So be on the lookout for what our next conversation will be. And as you want to recognize and celebrate the diversity that surrounds you, the Folk Institute has an inclusion planner there where we do holidays and holy days throughout the year that recognize all different cultures and religions. And we do have the 2023 planner still available for these last few months, but we are going to be this month rolling out our new 2024, and it's a calendar, and it's cool.
It looks amazing.
Every month highlights and showcases something different, some different cultural awareness item that you should just, if you didn't know it, now you do, and it's a beautiful thing. So we're going to encourage you to go and grab that inclusion planner. I'm going to go ahead and drop the link into the comments. And with that, Carrie, can we ask you, what are your final thoughts today?
Well, first of all, I want to say thank you to Dr. Nicholas Diaz for being here, because it's always a pleasure to spend time speaking about things that's near and dear to my heart, which is just about everything that we talk about, which I'm passionate about. And I also want to say that just to encourage our listening audience to recognize that when you look at globalization is here to stay. People are moving and will continue to move all over this country, all over the world. And it can be, and not can be, it is a good thing. It's a good thing for us to embrace. It's a good thing for us to begin to have conversations and communication about what that means and how can we all celebrate and evolve and grow from this in the various experiences, especially raising our children who will be the next generation leading the next generation of leaders. Let me say it that way. And I'm just really grateful to have a very small part, play a very small part in making this successful for everyone.
Thank you, Carrie. And I'm sure Dr. Diaz, any final thoughts from you as we wrap up?
Sure. Yeah. I guess I'd emphasize that, Hispanic culture and history, integrating into the curriculum, it's not just beneficial for Hispanic students. I think it enriches the learning environment for everyone. As Dr. Carrie said, in this interconnected world, cultural literacy and understanding, they're not optional. I think they're just essential for us as human beings. So happy Hispanic Heritage Month. Felicidades a todos.
Yay.
Thanks so much, everybody. Bye.
Bye-bye.